Hi folks, I was just setting up for a different shoot. It's been a while since we've recorded a video at Spicules, so we're going to do some stuff on some tech stuff. But whilst the office was empty and I had a spare 10-15 minutes, I thought I would do a short video on me and my Aspergers diagnosis. Most of you know about me and my background, but you know, I saw the Great Foxes Afloat video yesterday where Colin got his head shaved, and you know, he's done some stuff before, and similarly, you know, I've done these talks at conferences, but you know, I share bits and pieces on Twitter, but I don't do an awful lot in terms of video about it. So as the local EDP newspaper is starting a mental health campaign this week, I figured I would share my experiences a little, and you know, this is largely unscripted apart from a few notes, Donald Trump style. So I'll ramble on for a little while and we'll see where this goes. But hopefully, you know, raising awareness about, you know, high functioning autism and Asperger's and all that type of stuff will just help, you know, help raise awareness during these campaigns for men's health. It's also really hot in this office, so if I look hot, I apologize. It is hot. I've had the aircon on all morning and it's done nothing. So a little bit about me and my background. So about 3-4 years ago, me and my partner, we were living in Norfolk, and she's worked with autistic young adults and kids over the years. And, you know, she was wondering why I was sat on the edge of the bed rocking most nights, but, you know, never put any great thought into it. And one day, sort of out the blue, I think we were sat on the sofa and she said, "I think you're autistic." And I went, "What?" I didn't believe a word of it. But we sort of laughed and joked about it, and she went to bed and I did some research. And, you know, at the time, there was a Channel 4 quiz that you could do online for like potential Asperger's autistic diagnosis. You can still find it in different places. I just to Channel 4 one sticks in my head. So yeah, I was sat there that night and I did the quiz, and it said you've got a pretty high chance that you're autistic. So I was like, nah, oh well. But you know, it kept on sitting in my brain. You know, there's nothing you can do about it. It was just something that was interesting to know. And so, you know, it sat in my brain. I went upstairs to say goodnight to her and told her about the quiz, to which she found great amusement. And she did it herself and it came back basically 0. And so I took it to, I sat on that for a while because she was like, "Oh, what are you going to do about it?" And I was like, "Nothing, absolutely nothing." And she went to sleep and I went downstairs and I shared the quiz online with a few people who I thought might actually be on the spectrum. So I said, hey, can you do this quiz? I'm just curious to know what your results are. And they all came back saying that they weren't on the spectrum. So clearly my judgment is skewed. And so after a couple of months, I did some research, did some more reading and stuff. And I found a doctor in Norwich who was willing to, you know, test me for Asperger's. And I appreciate with Asperger's that it's a subjective, you know, autism in general is a subjective, you know, diagnosis. And so there's an awful lot of questions, and it was 2 sessions I came back for. You know, we went through an awful lot of different questions, some scenarios, and what happens if this happened, you know, and that type of thing. In the end, the doctor said, "You're actually more on the autistic scale than a lot of the people who have been to see me. in my opinion. But you seem to have developed various coping mechanisms and are doing all right with it. And, I was 33, 32, 33 at the time. And so, I've gone through my entire life with, this just, knowing that I was autistic, not knowing I was autistic, but being autistic. You don't suddenly magically become autistic, if you catch my drift. And so, just being diagnosed. So she said, oh, so, is there anything that I can do or I can refer you for that would help? And I said, no, it won't change a thing. Of course, that was wrong. So, but what it did do was it helped an awful lot in terms of my partner being able to understand me as a person, myself being able to understand me better and why certain things were happening. And so I went away, and it was a rough few months for both of us, in terms of coming to terms with the diagnosis, figuring out what we were going to do, how things changed, how people have to adapt to, better fit other people. And so, for a few months it was interesting and testing and stressful. It was definitely stressful. But, of course, these things just iron out and you sort of forget about them and become, you come to accept who you are again. You're slightly different, but you're not. You just know something about yourself that you didn't know beforehand. So, the diagnosis was an interesting point in my life because I just started work for NASA. And so, I was talking to my bosses at JPL, and I was like, I'm going to put this stuff on Twitter. It doesn't mean that I've actually changed. It's just I've got the diagnosis, and, hopefully it doesn't affect you much. But, from my perspective, everything's cool. So as long as you guys are cool, I'm cool. And, the guys at JPL have been fantastic, in supporting me and making sure that, I feel part of a team and all that type of stuff. And so, the diagnosis, me putting stuff on Twitter and social media about it, doing presentations at tech conferences about it, has never ever been a big deal at all, which is nice. So a little bit about how it affects work. I am higher functioning autistic, and for that reason, it means that I can operate pretty normally in a work environment. I have noticed since I got my diagnosis and interacting with other autistic people, that an awful lot of us are self-employed. I just talked about working for NASA, but technically I run a company and I am, a director of a couple of businesses. It suits me and my schedule and my lifestyle to be self-employed. Now, clearly there's an awful lot of non-autistic people who are self-employed, but asking around, it seems to be quite skewed for autistic people, Asperger people to be self-employed. I suspect it's because we operate better by ourselves, by and large. We potentially have weird, obsessive behaviors. We want to be able to do stuff that interests us as people. And I'm not saying that people who aren't Aspergic don't have these interests or don't have these desires, but ours are normally, quite amplified to the point of massive obsession, obsessive compulsive, ADHD traits and that type of stuff where, you want to know it all and you want to know it all now. And so, being self-employed certainly helps, I think, to a certain degree. Of course, it brings other challenges in terms of networking. I am terrible at networking, not to the point, some people find networking hard. I would happily spend an entire day pretending to be on my phone rather than go and talk to people who I've never spoken to before. I was down at Goonhilly the other week, networking at Goonhilly. Even though we all had a common interest, we were all there to learn about satellite operations and that type of stuff. I managed to a degree because on the second night we were at a team meal and what have you, so I had to talk to some people. But as soon as that meal finished and people started mingling, I just left because I couldn't figure out what to do. And prior to sitting down for the meal, I was just sat on a windowsill rocking. So, you'll find me rocking a lot. But it's not a bad thing. You can still come and talk to me. It's just, it seems to be one of my, releases, which I don't think is too uncommon. So Goon Hilly, it was interesting. There was one guy who I was supposed to talk to all week. Never got to speak to him because I didn't know what to say. The funny thing is, though, as soon as I've had an interaction with a person and I clearly share a common interest, I need to speak to them for a particular reason, I know how that conversation is likely to play out in my head, I won't have a problem talking to people. If I go to a tech conference and I talk at that tech conference and then people come up to me afterwards, not a problem. I will talk for ages, about whatever subject matter you want to discuss with me. But if it was like a networking session where I don't know that person and I don't know what they're going to talk about, I find it incredibly difficult. Certainly networking affects me. Just, making contact with people affects me. But, certainly online and then in person, if I talk to people on social media or on the chat room or whatever, and then I meet them in person, of course, I've got a connection with them, and so I don't have a problem. Eye contact is certainly a problem, but just the usual chit-chat, sort of starts to flow more easily. And clearly, for non-autistic people, that's also a case, but, I take this to the absolute extreme, and would happily just sit there all day pretending to be on my phone. I guess it also affects work because of, I have various ADHD traits, and so, darting from one thing to the next, juggling, 100 different things at the same time is certainly a challenge. And I try and rein myself in. It's not always successful, but, I haven't had any grumpy customers yet, so I'm obviously doing something reasonably right. But, I appreciate Stephen, who works for me in my office here, and Bruno, who works in Brazil, and, other people who we work with. They have to put up with a lot because I dart from, subject matter to subject matter. And so, that is definitely challenging, shall we say. How does it affect my home life? That's a good question. So, at home, it's generally all right. I have a few issues, and so my eldest daughter, she is 6. She always wants to stare me in, she wants eye contact, up close in my face, daddy, daddy, daddy. And that's a problem because as an autistic person, I definitely struggle with eye contact. I would rather look up here, I'd rather look up here, I'd rather look, anywhere. And she's in my face. And so, and she hasn't noticed, she's young, she doesn't notice these things, but I notice, and it, annoys me, but I don't know what I can do about it because I don't feel comfortable looking my own daughter in the eyes, which is ridiculous, but that's just how it is. And then obsessive compulsive stuff at home, I will watch endless amounts of canal boating videos, as everyone knows. I obsess about being in the States. I don't know why, I've always just wanted to be in the States to the point where I know the national anthem, it's stupid stuff. But it all affects my home life because I have these big urges to do grand things, big plans all the time, and not just, day-to-day living. And that's equally annoying for my partner. But yeah, and then also, the general family stuff, family gatherings. Oh, I have to go to my partner's mum's 60th in a couple of weeks, and I am dreading it. I'm absolutely dreading it. I will turn up to this meal, and I'm sure it will go fine, but internally, it worries you. Being in a social situation with people who I know pretty well. But I don't do large social gatherings anymore. I didn't really do them to start with. But just the thought of sitting around a large table with 30 odd people and then a party afterwards, it just doesn't float my boat. I'd rather just sit in a dark room, to be honest. Yeah. So, and that's stuff like that's annoying because, clearly the rest of my family are going to want to see her family. And so I obviously have to go along and try and act normal, which normally involves me rocking again. Do a lot of rocking every day, endless rocking. Whatever. Makes me feel better. So I've not had many meltdowns. There's been a couple where at home it's got a bit too much and you'll find me sort of curled up against a radiator. But I don't really show it. The few times that's happened, I have jumped up as soon as my partner comes downstairs or upstairs. I don't really show. I don't want to show it because it's weird. And it's normally just when stuff gets, there's too much work stuff going on, there's too much home stuff going on. I have migraines that are induced by just working stupidly long hours because I don't know what else to do. And so eventually it all gets a bit too much, and either you'll find me crouched by a radiator, or I have what the missus calls the face, which I don't really know. But apparently is me just staring blankly whilst people ask me questions. But apparently it's a thing. She does a very good impression of it. I do recognise it when she does the impression. But when it's happening, I don't really notice. But it's stuff just going in one ear and out the other. But on the flip side, when I am operating normally, my hearing is ridiculous. I will be able to, and this is the thing about parties and things like that is, I can tune into 10 different conversations going on at the same time. And so it's pretty exhausting when it comes to, when it comes to listening to all these conversations. I really don't try and earwig. It's just everything seems to be the same volume. And so, I just hear all these conversations going at once, and it gets, it's draining. It's draining, and by bedtime, I'm exhausted. So I try and steer away from various bits and pieces. But I'm happy in my office. I'm happy at home, happy on a boat, happy, on an airplane. I love traveling as well. Traveling. But not I don't really talk to people when I'm traveling unless someone comes to ask me a direct question. I will go to I'll go traveling and I'll go and sit in an Airbnb and I'll quite happily drive around, walk around, look at the countryside, do all sorts. I probably won't talk to anyone, even if it's for a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, Yeah. So since my diagnosis, I'm largely accepting of who I am now. It took quite a while. But these days, it is what it is. I'm happy being who I am. The missus has largely, accepted me for my weird quirks. And I feel like also now I've had a diagnosis, of course, I don't have to suppress these bits and pieces as much as I used to. I used to just hold it all in. And I still hold in most of my emotions. I have a dry sense of humor. I don't really emote. I don't ask people about their emotions. I just it makes the missus chuckle, because if you ask me how I'd like my day to go, on a scale of 1 to 10, where 1 is, boring, terrible, not exciting, not interesting, and 10 is yay, the most amazing thing ever. If you kept my day on a 5 every day for the rest of my life, just ticking over, I would be happy. And I can see why, Colin and Sean from Foxes Afloat have gone to live on the boat. It means that they can take life at their own pace. The triggers are less. And I don't know about Colin, but, if that type of thing would keep me at a steady number 5 and would make me quite happy. And how does it affect others? People have to learn to deal with it to a certain degree. I don't most people who met me for the first time wouldn't know that I'm autistic. They wouldn't have a clue. Apart from the fact that if they looked at me, I would probably look up here somewhere. But it does affect others. It does affect relationships that I have with other people. Most people have learned to deal with it. I get an awful lot of people at tech conferences, if I talk about my Aspergers, coming up and thanking me for talking about it and that type of stuff. And, I like to be able to share these insights with people, because I feel like not enough people talk about this type of stuff. I don't know why. But, it's not really discussed. It's hidden away. And so there's no harm. If you're sat at home and you're wondering whether or not you're Aspergic or autistic or whatever, there's plenty of tests that you can take online that will give you an indicator. Do not take them as read. They are, an indicator as to whether, that you're autistic or Aspergic. And still, for edge cases, it can be, from a doctor's perspective, it's something that they, there's a bunch of rules and stuff about it, but they still, it's still a judgment call at the end of the day. So you don't necessarily get the outcome you're looking for, but it's something that if you feel like that, you've got these, social triggers or hidden, cues and quirks and weird stuff, go and get a referral and go and have a chat with a doctor about it, because there's not a lot that they can do for you, but just knowing can be really useful, and your family knowing can be really useful if you choose to share it with them, and your employers and your colleagues and that type of thing. So yeah, if you're wondering whether or not you're Aspergic, autistic or whatever, go get referral, go and have a talk to your GP. You can do this stuff privately as well. It doesn't have to be via the NHS if you don't want it to be. Go and have a chat. Hopefully this has been interesting. Hopefully it's been insightful. I know it's been a bit of a ramble, but I've tried to keep it on topic. If you've got any comments, questions, or want to know more, just pop a comment into the comments box, or email me. I'm always email, tom@spicual.co.uk. I'm on Twitter @magicaltrout. If you want to find out more, then just, feel free to get in touch. I will happily, we've got a common interest, I'll happily talk for ages about it. Yeah, so thanks for watching and see you later.